Welcome back to All I Can Bear, everybody. Today we're going to do our first reveal episode. If you remember in the introduction, I talked about doing different formats for different episodes. Some will be quick hit, little 3 minute anecdotal things about everyday life. Some will be on a particular topic, a little more in depth. And then we'll be doing some reveal episodes. Reveal episodes will be where I talk about me, who I am, some experiences in my life. Some very serious, I'm sure, if this continues to grow and be something I do, and some just more about me, so you can get to know me as you kind of share with me my experiences on the channel and get to know a little bit more about who I am. The first reveal I'm going to be doing is that I do own a business, and it has been significant. It has been over 20 years of my life, so I think it's appropriate to be the first one that I discuss. And the first thing I reveal to folks that don't know me, if you know me, you know that I do own a business, and it's pretty much everything that I do. For good, bad, or indifferent, it is very much a humongous part of who I am. Everything I do for the last 20 years has been very much defined by running a business, starting a business, the employees we have, the impact it's had on my schedule, my flexibility, my daughters, what they've seen, my wife, and what she's had to be a part of, and in some cases go through, and in some cases sharing her success. So I'll start from the beginning and tell you what kind of got me to where I am right now. Started early on. I was working for Hewlett Packard. And as I get into other episodes, I'll talk more about career. I'll talk more about business, entrepreneurialism. I'll get into some more detail on my life, even leading up to this. But since this is focused on my business ownership, I'll start with that. I was working for Hewlett Packard in Houston. And, I had some entrepreneurial bug and felt that I had that part of me that could be owning a business, leading a business, and wanting to work hard and grow something. And due to a whole bunch of different circumstances, at the time, there was a lot of offshoring going on to India and Costa Rica and Canada and other places. They called it nearshoring, offshoring, right-shoring, you name it. And I'm certainly not a protectionist. If you were to get into my kind of geopolitical or business, opinions on business globally, I get it. We live in a shrinking world, and I think it's good that we kind of engage in different markets. But from just a pure delivery of service standpoint, I felt that some of the services we were delivering at the time could have been done in the U.S. and could have been done in markets where it's a little more affordable. You can provide a family-sustaining wage with benefits and all those good things, and it doesn't have to be a major city at the highest cost, and it certainly doesn't have to be at the lowest cost in cheaper labor markets. So had some thoughts on that, ran it up to some VPs I knew, and they said that's a great idea, but they're certainly not going to stop billions of dollars of investment just because Mike Stohan says that it's a good idea to try and look at rural markets in the U.S. So I actually called a representative for an area where my dad's side of the family is from. It's the Johnstown, Pennsylvania area, southwestern PA. And I called a state representative and introduced myself and told him that I was looking to potentially start a business in the Johnstown area. And to his credit, he took me seriously. He put me in touch with his administrative team, put me in touch with economic developers in the area, and talked to them about me and who I am and what I'm looking to do. I mentioned to him that I had ties to the region, and before you knew it, I was working with some employees and fellow employees and managers that I worked with at HP, doing some fundraising and some seed activity to get the business started. And I was flying up from Houston to Johnstown to try and pitch folks there on why it would be important for them to support me and us in starting a business there, which was really, I look back now and it really is surreal. For anybody who's thinking about starting a business or has started a business, I can tell you it is really hard. And the last 21 years has flown. I really look back at myself and I say that was, I think, 32-year-old me. I was so much younger, thinner, had more hair. I mean, you name it. It was a much different part of my life. And it's emotional for me even to think about because it's been a lot that's happened since then. All good. I'm always focused on the positive. I have a lot of lessons I've learned. There's been some tough times through it all. But boy, I look back at myself at 32 and I say, holy cow, what I would go back and tell myself. So we came up to Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and we looked at the options and looked at the potential to start a business there. Would it fly? Would it make sense? Were there areas that would make sense to start a business, office space, you name it? And it was amazing. We were meeting with representatives, state senators, state representatives, and I want to be clear, I have zero business background, literally whatsoever. I have been an employee the majority of my life up until that point. Everything from, waiter at a Pizza Hut to a dishwasher, Perkins, odd jobs through school. Then my career, kind of took me into white collar, post college, working in business and doing that type of stuff. But no business background whatsoever. And here I am with fellow ownership at the time, and we're presenting to really important people in the region. And it was a little overwhelming. It was exciting. As I've said before, I love talking. I do not mind public speaking. So believe me, it was like putting a quarter in me and winding me up and put me in front of all those people. And man, did I really bring it. And I say bring it, not pat myself on the back, meaning I think the passion came out, the authenticity, my desire to do what we were looking to do came out, and they loved it. And they embraced me. And, that area is phenomenal. I'll talk about that in a minute. And so we did it. To be transparent, at the time, I think I was a level 2 manager at HP and was part of a team that was supporting North and South American sales. So it was a pretty decent position with a wonderful team. My wife was working for GE Capital, and we had, by every measure, we had great careers. We just bought a beautiful home. We had 2 children, 3 and 1. And somehow I convinced my wife to, give all that up and take every dollar we had and incorporate a company and pack our family in a minivan and drive on up to a small rural coal and steel town. And, I say that a little bit to kind of evangelize and, add a little more, kind of excitement to the move. But it really was that. Make no mistake. My wife and I wrote a check for pretty much all the money we had to incorporate the business and have a starting balance. And if this hadn't worked out, we would be broke. And I don't know if my kids would be able to afford to go to college. It would have been life-changing for us had it not worked out. I wanted to do it right. I didn't want to moonlight. I didn't want to grow it on the side. So we took all the money we had so that I could draw a salary, so I can have office space and have a legitimate company and a legitimate presence. And so we did it. So we had a moving company take all of our belongings, and we sold a house that we just recently bought a few years prior. And we bought a small, tiny little house in southwestern PA in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And we started the company. And I'm happy to say 21 years later, it has been an amazing journey. Something I'll talk a lot about on the channel. I have stories for days. I mean, I could probably do, hundreds of hours just on business, on employees, on clients, on the good times and bad times and fun stories and all the good stuff. So we decided to start the business in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Johnstown, if you don't know, is in southwestern PA. It does have some history to it. It does have some famous pop culture to it. History-wise, it is an old steel and coal town, and there's a lot of old Carnegie, Schwab, and Mellon money there. At the turn of the century, 19th century, there was a ton of industry and trains and railways and coal and steel being pulled out of there. Bethlehem Steel was a huge employer there. Pop culture wise, if you're familiar with the movie Slapshot, Johnstown Chiefs, that was filmed there. Believe it or not, that hockey team still exists by a new name and new ownership. I believe they're called the Johnstown Tomahawks now. But they still do Hanson Brother nights for any of you hockey fans. They literally have the actual Hanson Brothers from the movie show up with the taped glasses and all the good stuff. Kids dress up as them. They still do that later. And I got to tell you, that's so representative of the small town America feel that is that town. It's awesome. So to see all the kids get together and pay homage to Slapshot all those years later, it was filmed there. All the Right Moves with Tom Cruise was filmed in Johnstown. So if you're familiar with that, it was a young man going through tough times in a steel town and coal town that is in economic decline and population decline. He struggles with a fair amount of that, and that's filmed right where our company is and where I've been for the last 20 years and where my daughters have gone to school all the way through graduating high school, and it's been a massive part of my life. The reason I picked Johnstown was because my father's side of the family is actually from there. We have 4 generations of good old-fashioned Polish coal mining heritage. My great-grandfather came over from Poland. My guess would be Poland to Ellis Island. From Ellis Island, by whatever means of transportation got them to Portage, Pennsylvania is actually the name of the little tiny town. And they did nothing but see the inside of a mine and probably the inside of a church on Sundays. And they worked hard. And, that is my lineage. That's my family. As of last count a few years ago, I think they said there were about 139 Stohans in Cambria County, which is crazy. So that's where my whole family's from. You know, my dad always jokes he gets the paper still. All these years later, he gets the paper sent to Princeton from all the way in Portage, and he always says there's a Stohan in the paper just about every week, either good or bad. There's a Stohan in newspaper, so it's a beautiful small town area. I could do entire episodes on Johnstown, and probably will, but I wanted to start it there because it was a place that I felt it was important to do economic development. I was proud to go to an environment where I can create jobs and be able to help people grow and grow a career there, stay there, build homes, have families. And I have to say, we'll get into all this later. We have been able to do all of that, and it's been unbelievably rewarding. So we started a company in Johnstown, and again, small little town. When we first had it, there was an office. I had about maybe 1,800 square feet. I had an official office. We had a conference room. We had a server room. Like, we had all this stuff, and it was just me. We had one client. I think that client was paying about $450 a month in terms of a retainer contract, and we were still bleeding. I mean, we were probably spending thousands of dollars a month just to be a legitimate business, but we only had one client at the time. And early on, we had a client. I met a superintendent in a school, and we had lunch, just introduction. You know, people just introducing me to people in the area, business owners and leaders, and their IT person left and went to a different district, and I got asked, I'll never forget this as long as I live. I got a call from the colleague who introduced us, and they said, hey, so-and-so at this school had their person leave, and they want to know if you and your company would be willing to provide the support. And I said, absolutely. I said, I will chalk the lines on their football field if they'll write the check to the company. I had one client, right? So we got on board with them, and that has been a huge part of our growth is educational IT, because as it goes in that industry, a superintendent moves to another school and wants to pull you with them. An assistant superintendent goes to another school and they realize how much they like working with me or us as a company, and they want to have us in there. And so that has been really, really big for us. And, you know, to put it in perspective, we started that little school, me doing their IT support, and our company just got done doing 11 months worth of work at Rutgers University, deploying, you know, access points all throughout the state, and some really significant work with Ivy League schools and you name it. But it all started with a tiny little opportunity with the school in southwestern PA. And I will say that those days were hard work for anybody who's thinking of running a business. Maybe it's different for other folks. Maybe if you manufacture something and you just sell it online, there's sort of turnkey ways to do it. It might be different, but I can say for me, as an early entrepreneur, it was a lot of work. And when I say a lot, you really can't imagine. I've sat in a couple business panels. I've been on some boards. And when I get asked questions, you know, I'll sit in a panel and I'll ask questions, and they'll say, what would you say to someone who was looking to start a business? And I always say this. I say, think of what you think it will take, and truly multiply that times about 100. And that is what it took. You know, 100-hour weeks, 80-hour weeks, all-nighters. You know, I think the record was at the time, I think I worked 72 days straight, including weekends. And that's just what you did. I mean, you know, we were trying to get something going. You know, I had employees that had just started, and I wanted them to feel like they had a future with the company. So we worked hard. Weekends, evenings, there were no real boundaries. It was just work. And I loved it. I have to say, I enjoy working hard. I often make the joke that you can put a bumper sticker on my car that says, I'd rather be working. And there is a big part of me that is that way. And sometimes I question it and say, do I work too much? You know, am I a workaholic? You know, that I spend as much time with my daughters as I can? I want to say the answer is yes, and they would agree. And I'll talk about the flexibility I had with the business that allowed for that. But boy, early on, it was a lot of work. And I mean, just gritty, you know, just brute force, you know, just working as hard as we could, as much as we could to get things started. I'm happy to say that after a couple of years of doing that, we've really been able to focus on life-work balance. At this point, if somebody works a couple minutes after our business hours, I almost feel like I want to know about it and feel it's important enough to do that. If not, I want them with their families. I want me with my family. I want me doing the things I enjoy. But early on, it was a lot of hard work. I'll also say that being an employer is pretty sobering. You know, when you look at the responsibilities of doing it, when you look at the responsibilities you have hiring someone, to have them trust in you and trust their career and their life and good years of their life with you is really something that hits you deep. I have had employees that have retired from the company that made massive career changes from really good jobs to work with me and to work with our company. And that person in particular was able to put two children through college. Her husband certainly is successful too, but her career was with us, and she made a significant change to join us. And I look at putting kids through college, and they have wonderful careers in their own right. And I see employees that are buying homes, and young people starting, and it is sobering being an employer. I take that as serious today as I ever had. I look at having young people work with us, and I look at me having to everything from teaching the fundamentals of how to be an employee, work ethic, and all the things that go with bright-eyed people that are right out of college. And it hits me. I say to myself, I hope that someone's working with my daughters the way that I'm working with those young people. It is overwhelming in great ways, and I really do mean in great ways, to see them look in people's eyes when they care about you as an employee, and they want to work hard, when they look up to you as an employer. It's absolutely mind-numbing, and it's very sobering. There's been a lot of positives, and there's been some challenges. The positives have been the impact on people and the impact on the region. I'm proud to say, again, I'm revealing things about myself here. We started the company about 20 years ago, and I'm happy to say now, for context, believe me, I'll brag on the company, and I am proud, and I am biased. I say this stuff just for context for you all to understand, okay, what has Mike done? Where has this company gone? I'm happy to say now we have close to 50 full-time employees in multiple states. It is a multi-million-dollar company at this point. You would not know that by looking at my financials. Trust me when I tell you that. I'll talk about that later as well. There's been a wonderful economic impact. We have put millions of dollars in taxes into the local economy, and I'm so proud of that. I always talk about I think there was a scene in Cinderella Man where he gives back. He comes back after winning the money as a boxer, and he gives back in change and loose bills, or bills and loose change, the money he got when he was on welfare, and he gave that back. And there's a part of me that feels like I've been happy to give back to the economy, whether it be national economy by way of federal withholding, Social Security match, and or local state taxes. I am proud to say that I have been a part of putting millions of dollars back in to taxes, and I love it. It's such an unbelievable feeling. It's a proud feeling, and the economics certainly are a measure of a business. For me, I think I say it here probably just to quantify a little bit. I'll talk about how I manage and the ways that we handle finance, but finance has been a big one. It's been successful by a lot of measure. Challenges. There's been a lot of challenges. It has not been easy all the time. There's times where you're feeling like, am I doing the right thing? Am I working too hard? Am I making too much sacrifice? Am I treating employees fairly? Am I a good employer? Am I an honest person? Am I trustworthy? You really question yourself a lot. It is really something. I have been a part of being sued by employees, and according to attorneys, it's kind of a thing, maybe a cash grab, or a way to just sort of lean on someone. And I learned a lot of hard legal lessons. The time away from family and the stress it puts on the family, financial stress. It's not a matter of always having flush money in a bank account. Sometimes you're trying to make payroll, you're waiting for receivables. I mean, there's so much that I learned in terms of just the ebbs and flows of finance. AR, AP, net 30 terms, and what it means. Just because you do millions of dollars in business doesn't mean that you will see millions of dollars in revenue when you need it to then make millions of dollars in payroll. So, we've certainly faced our fair share of economic challenges as we've learned to ebb and flow with revenue. And so, there have definitely been some bumps and bruises. Me learning how to be a better employer. I look at as an employer who I am today versus who I was when I first started, and I have grown. My expectations of people are different. The way I treat people is different. I don't mean I was mean or overbearing or yelling at anybody. That really hasn't been my way. I'm pretty intense, and I do like to work hard, but I've always tried to lead by example where I can. But just the expectation of people, the understanding of probably young people more than ever, understanding if I have somebody working for me who's 21 years old or 22 years old, they were just taking their books to a high school locker a few years before that. This could be their first job. out of college or their first job ever of any seriousness, and being able to understand that now more with a little more empathy. Again, not that I was mean to anybody who was young or who was early in their career, but just the understanding of what you have to teach, what you have to show. I'm looking at it through the eyes of a father now more. I think of my daughters at 24 and 22 and what it's like for their employers and what they learn. So you learn to look at things through a little different lens, a little more mature lens. I've gotten a little bit jaded, admittedly. Early on, it was just I would do anything for anybody, and I was always trying to be very selfless, and still am, by the way, in terms of business ownership. Sometimes I feel like I let myself get taken advantage of. Sometimes I feel like, being nervous about pricing. Am I charging too much? Am I not charging enough? Will I win it if we price it in that way? And, being nervous about pricing. And I always say that you could probably talk me in to lowering my price just by talking to me more about it. The more I talk about it, the more I go through it, the more I realize, is this too much? Do we need to bring it down a little bit? How's that going to look versus competition? And, I've gotten better at understanding pricing and being proud of what it takes to, run a business. That, when I am putting together pricing for a client or for a proposal, I have payroll to make. We have employees that have to be paid, and they have to have benefits and vision and dental and healthcare and 401k and all that good stuff. And that comes at a cost, and that cost needs to be represented in what we charge for clients. Early on, when you're so fledgling and it's the lemonade stand approach, there's a little bit of nervousness about how much you charge people. So I've learned that, but there certainly have been some challenges. I'll talk about those in greater details later as we get into more episodes. I've been asked would I do it again, right? And I'm going to end with this. It is a tough question. I will say this from a pure monetary perspective. I probably would have, and it's because of how I choose to run a business. I want to be clear. It's not due to bad circumstances, but had I probably stayed where I was at HP, making what I was making, with my wife making what she made, I probably would be either the same, if not in a stronger economic position. And I mean that. I truly do. So there is the economic piece of things. But when I look back at what the last 20 years have been for me and my family, and the just absolutely incredible people that I've met, I would absolutely do it again. My favorite movie, you'll learn, one of my favorite movies is It's a Wonderful Life. And they talk about the fact, I can get emotional just talking about it. There's the ending scene where all the people in town bring all the money for George Bailey, and because he struggled and always stayed in a small town and gave up a lot of his dreams for other people. And his brother toasts him, and he says that George Bailey is the richest man in town. And I can definitely tell you, as someone who has lived my life very similar, I felt like maybe sometimes I curtailed certain dreams I had, or didn't pursue things I didn't pursue because at the time an employee might have needed something from me, or the company needed something from me. That could not be more true. You cannot measure wealth just based off money. I think of all the times in my life where I've been either happy or sad or frustrated or you name it. I don't know if I ever can remember how much money I made at the time or what my bank balance was at the time. When I think of awesome times, it's because of people. It's because of stories, it's things we did, going to the movies, playing sports together, just hanging out, chit-chatting, late night in the parking lot talking, and kind of living life with people around you and enjoying what it has. None of that to do with financials. But I can tell you that for me, the wealth really has been the people, the experiences in business, the experiences in my life, what my family has been exposed to because of it. My daughters grew up with the company. I think about early on, my daughter's coming to the office and playing under my desk. My daughter's writing, drawing on the whiteboard, and the other employees seeing what they drew there, and coming to all of our picnics and coming to parades that we went to and attended and things like that. Our daughters when we started the company, my daughters were 3 and 1. My one daughter was still in a carrier, right? And so they truly have grown up with the company. They know all of our employees, and that is wealth. The wealth of people in your life and good people in your life. And everything from sponsoring Little League teams to basketball teams to mentoring and feeling like you're a part of helping an economy grow, a part of a community be successful. Man, if I had a chance to do it over again, I absolutely would. I would certainly do things different. There's things I would hope that I would learn from. If I had the benefit of hindsight, I would definitely do some things different. Not a whole lot, I'm not someone who lives with a lot of regret. I feel that the challenges you have and the things you run into that are tough or the mistakes you make, they are part of who you are, and they help shape who you are going forward. They are part of your character. So I really wouldn't do much different by way of trying to avoid all the mistakes I've made, but I would definitely be a lot more business wise than I am now, and maybe a little more savvy. I'll say, I'm ending with would I do it again? And I'll say that I'll talk about this in other episodes, but I have chosen to be relatively selfless in my approach to the business. And it's awkward to talk about that because I was always brought up that if you do good things and you do things for people that are unselfish, then you don't talk about them, because bragging about that is kind of the opposite of humility, and it's not something you talk about. You do good things for people and you do it quietly. So in the context of this channel, I think some things I do have to talk about that would otherwise be awkward for me, because it goes against kind of my principles in that space. But I'll say that I have chosen the selfless way of leading and or running the business. Some specifics there. I don't think I've given myself a raise in 10 years. And the employees know this. This is nothing that is new. This is nothing that is a secret. That isn't a reveal in of itself. If you know me, you know that's true. It's been well over 10 years. I have not given myself a raise. We do not take owner disbursements. All the money we've made, we've invested back into the company, back into the employees. I have cut my pay to keep an employee so that we didn't have to let people go. I have met employees late at night and met them in an ATM and gave them a couple bucks to help them through that pay period's bills where they might have been struggling a little bit, and I don't ask for the money back in those cases. And in some of those cases, I've done stuff for employees that I feel you might say have sort of done me wrong, if you will. And believe me, that's a strong term to use. I don't mean they've actually done me wrong in any really bad way. But in the end, I have felt that that was the way that I wanted to do things, because I think that is enjoyable business ownership. It's something that kind of fills your heart, kind of gives you a good sense of reward beyond just monetary. And I would not do that any different. I am very proud of the fact that we have chosen to be fairly selfless in how we do things. Believe me when I tell you, when I'm struggling, when I'm having a tough time, sometimes I question that. And I feel like, am I doing this and I'm being taken advantage of? Am I just a big business sucker? And the answer is always no. It's always no, because it always comes back to seeing an employee, seeing them with their family, a new employee that, I hear from their parents that, they're so proud to be working with us and how happy they are. And you see those things and you realize there is no measuring stick that has to do with money or bank balance or bank account. So I think it is right to run the business that way. That's my way, by the way. That does not have to be someone else's way. Some people are motivated by wealth and accumulating wealth and growing and feel that that goes hand in hand with it. I want to be clear. It's not as if I'm dirt poor and I'm always sacrificing and I'm just hand to mouth at the detriment of myself or other people. I've just chosen to be one who invests in the company, that is pretty modest in how I live and what I do, because I believe in reinvesting back in the community and reinvesting back in the employees that have been helping us drive success. So again, if I had to do it all over again, I would absolutely do it all over again, and I would do nothing different. I would be the same person. I would work just as hard. I would surround myself with the same wonderful people, and would regret nothing. So with that said, my first reveal episode is now behind us. Now you know a little more about me than hopefully you did when you started. If you know me, then this is all old hat. You've heard these stories 1,000 times. But again, the reveal for today is that I am a business owner and own a business with a good amount of employees and a good amount of revenue. And I hope to have that be something I share throughout the channel, and episodes will be tied a lot to business ownership because of how much of it being a part of who I am. So we'll see you on the next episode, and we'll reveal more and we'll talk more. I'm going to do a couple little small episodes on business to supplement this one and release them at the same time. But hopefully you enjoyed hearing about the business stuff and some of the entrepreneurialisms and the ups and downs with it, and we'll talk to you all soon.